graduate show. 405 years ago today, one Guido Fawkes was executed for his involvement in a plot to assassinate the Protestant King James IV of Scotland and replace him with his 9-year-old daughter, Princess Elizabeth. Gunpowder was hidden in the cellars beneath the House of Lords for almost 5 months before it was discovered, along with Guy, just hours before Parliament reopened on the 5th of November 1605. He is, to this day, considered the only man ever to enter the Houses of Parliament with truly honest intentions.
Obvious Joe.
Fawkes was tried under the pseudonym John Johnson, but during torture revealed both his own identity and that of the 12 other members of the conspiracy. On the 31st of January 1606, Guy and 3 others were taken to be executed. However, after witnessing the grisly decapitation of Thomas Winter, Ambrose Rookwood and Robert Keyes, Fawkes leapt from the scaffold and broke his own neck. His body was still drawn and quartered, despite already being dead. Ironically, the Right Honourable David Cameron was also once caught with his trousers down in the cellar of the House of Lords, before squealing on Lord Archer. Cameron, too, was said to have suffered from a short hanging. Speaking of small Camerons, falls from grace and pains in the neck, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome the highly treasonous Cameron Rose Smith.
Thank you, Jacob, for that long-winded, bloated introduction on part of Tony Blair apology. Yes, indeed, this is the Graduate Show, a somewhat topical and somewhat funny approach to political news and whatever else takes our fancy in the week. Being all unemployed and stuff, or in jobs that we swore we'd eat our own testes before touching, we've become a frustrated bunch of fellows and have travelled far and wide to find a medium to express our distaste with current affairs. So, as if you haven't got enough typical opinion and biased news programmes that are well edited, well presented, and can be seen on your glorious high-definition 32-inch screen from the comfort of your very own sofa, we are presenting to you a tiny, poor-quality rendition of our informed grievances for your enjoyment, displeasure, or sexual gratification. Whatever you're into. And now we come to the show where we like to have a look at your letters you send in to us here at Avenue Road Studios. I've got a great one from Masika Masari, age 7, from Royal Tunbridge Wells. And as you can see, it's the current Egyptian riots going on. Fantastic. We've got the pyramids on fire, billowing smoke. I believe that's a tank. Great use of colour, Masari. And that's a police officer on fire, shooting the protesters who've broken curfew. Fantastic. And up here we've got the dictator with delusions of a pharaoh conducting this whole unorchestrated mess. Fantastic. And I think she says, yeah, she can understand the Egyptians' anger. It's a cry for democracy, she says. She adds, Mubarak's dismissal of his cabinet is a feeble attempt to calm the civil unrest. There will be no peace until Mubarak himself leaves office. She asks, what's the deal with North Africa anyway? First Tunisia, and now this. I don't understand. Well, Masika, they're Arabs, and therefore crazy. They are fighting about a government who gets into power through lies and a flawed voting system, record unemployment and spending cuts. In our civilised Western world, we prefer to bring in social change by quietly and politely discussing the topic with the person next to us in the dole queue. Now, over to Jacob with a section all about words. Jacob.
Welcome to Words, section all about words. Now, universities like the term alumni. It's a warm and cosy, oldie-fashionedy, Latin-y, wordy sounding thingy that makes you feel all connected, like a brotherhood to your fellow ex-students. It also allows the university to keep a hold on your life and bask in your relative future success, as if they had in some way been a benefactor to you. But if alumni is to be a term flung brashly around by such university institutions, then one should consider it in its original meaning. Indeed, for that matter, let us consider all such eagerly used terms: degree, graduate. It's a veritable minefield of confusion and misuse. The term alumni is not to be confused with aluminum, or for those of us who know better, aluminium. Aluminium is a lightweight and easily malleable element that is unable to occur as a free metal, and so is found only in coalition with other minerals. Aluminium's most common form is as a thin, pliable and readily bent sheet. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Nick Clegg, the tin foil man. Ha! An amusing aside, no doubt, and possibly the only real joke in this section of the show, but one that distracts me from my original point. Alumni is the plural of alumnus, masculine, alumna, feminine, meaning literally student of. It is taken from the verb alere, meaning to nourish, feed or support. Alumni should also not be mistaken for the not quite equivalent graduate. Graduate comes again from Latin graduus, or step, and if we consider it in its true meaning to change gradually, or to arrange and divide by degrees, it demonstrates that we, the graduates, have been through the stages, or graduations, on the road to God knows where. The term degree, as we are told by the very word itself, is merely one step in a series of process and progression. It is not the final, all-powerful elixir worthy of such pomp and self-congratulation as the universities would like to have you believe. So, what's the difference between alumni and graduate? Well, an alumnus is an individual who has been through the graduating degrees of education, who has been and continues to be nourished and supported by a specific institution, an auxiliary lifeline that you feel has your back, and not vice versa. Whereas a graduate is an impoverished and unemployable, overeducated anybody.
Big society. Don't talk to me about the big society. Before this so-called big society came along, I used to be happily unemployed, volunteering down at the local post office, helping out at the kids' school, and volunteered me time as a lifeguard down at swimming pool. Now this big society has come along, all that's changed. There's no sense of community left. It's all these high-flying city folks in their fancy cars who can't move around here at the weekend for busybody volunteers. There's naught left around here for the likes of me. I've had to take up full-time employment down at the bank just for something to do, you know. Big society indeed. You know what, Mr. Cameron? You can fuck off.
And that brings us to Why We're Here. Tonight titled, Doctor Who Let Nick Clegg Back Inside. Big Society, that's right folks, the Big Society. David Cameron's revolutionary new idea and centrepiece of his 2010 election manifesto. Introduced to such rave reviews as...
Oh, it's a fig leaf for savage spending cuts.
And eloquently described by one MP as...
Complete crap.
Quite the way of words that man has. Now, I know what you're thinking. Any other seasoned politician would have seen these overwhelming indifferences and let the policy fall into obscurity, such as Margaret Thatcher's 1979 economic proposal,
Break up the North.
or Tony Blair's 2001 social reform platform.
Let's just say he has them.
I think that one went through.
Oh.
It's okay. Well, my point is that David Cameron is not just another politician.
No. He is a man of his word. And when he says he's going to do something, come hell or high water, any lack of intellectual integrity and public support, he will do it.
And basically, and by basically I mean not very well thought outly, Mr. Cameron wants to cut funding for thousands of local services. Instead, he wants us to go back to the 50s Britain, in which people would give up their free time in order to run the schemes themselves.
Mr. Osborne is doing his part by making sure there's a lot more free people with a lot more free time.
And if that saves the government some money and isolates communities and endangers the life of the elderly, then so be it. Because I say it will be a small price to pay in order to regain 50s Britain.
A time when we were great.
A time of solidarity.
Compassion.
When whole villages would gather around to take part in the local wife beat. When kids wouldn't stand around on street corners with knives and hoodies.
No, they'd stand around on street corners with knives and polio.
People, I believe in this so much that for the last 2 weeks I have worked night and day to become the best casual racist.
Not content with turning the clock back to the 1950s, the Big Society will be paid for with up to £60 million acquired from dormant bank accounts to form a Big Society bank, which is a redistribution of wealth not seen since Moscow 1917, and although I didn't actually do history at school, I seem to recall that this turned out just fine.
David Cameron is not just a man of the past, he also has his eyes set firmly on the future, on the next 10 years.
The Big Society was introduced because Mr. Cameron was worried that the Conservatives would not leave enough of a legacy, claiming he didn't want people in 10 years' time saying they just paid down the deficit.
He just balanced the books.
They just got the economy moving again.
Now, not to freak you out, David, but I have a strange feeling that's not what we're going to be saying. And actually, in 10 years' time, after the economic meltdown forces us to our own history books,
2010 to 2014 will probably be remembered as a strange time in history when the country was run by Ant and Dec.
Having a government that promises a better future by repeating the mistakes of the past, that's why we're all... Good night.